Okay.
Hey everyone, my name is Andy DeSantis, and I'm a registered dietitian who helps people reverse fatty liver disease using the power of nutrition science. Now, I've been a registered dietitian for 10 years, and I've really been focusing on fatty liver primarily in the last several years, simply because it's very common, and my nutrition philosophy and my evidence-based background are really well suited to helping resolve the condition. In today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through some things I want you to be aware of if you are newly diagnosed with fatty liver disease. And the first thing I want you to know is that you're not alone. Okay. The fact of the matter is, fatty liver disease, which is currently known as MASLD, metabolic associated steatotic liver disease, which basically just means you have a little bit of fat in your liver and you have some blood work like HDL, triglycerides, blood sugar, insulin markers, some blood work that's out of range, and you have fat in your liver. Right. The good news is the dietary changes that fix one are going to fix the other ones too. So that's the first thing I want you to know. As I said, the second thing is you aren't alone. Okay. 1 in 3 adults in North America have a fatty liver. And what I've seen in terms of projections and estimations is that by 2050, 4 in 10 adults in North America will have a fatty liver. You're not alone. Now, by the way, I also want you to know the following: the human liver weighs 3.5 pounds at most, and only 5% of that, which is zero point 0.2 pounds, has to consist of fat for you to be considered to have a fatty liver. So I don't want you to think, if you were told by your doctor that you have a fatty liver, that you have a mound of fat on your liver. That's not true. You probably have a very small amount of fat on your liver, and it is essentially your body's way of telling you that maybe you haven't done things quite right from the diet and lifestyle perspective. And storing fat in the liver is basically your body's way of saying, hey, listen, you got to change things up, because fat is not supposed to be stored in your liver, right? It gets stored there probably because you have some insulin resistance, some excessive inflammation, probably some imbalances in your gut bacteria. Okay. And a lot of people are surprised about the connection between the gut microbiome, which is just a way to say all of the bacteria in your gut, and your liver. And the reason why they're connected is after blood goes through your digestive system, it goes to your liver next, which is why people who have a history of antibiotic use tend to have a higher risk of fatty liver disease. Anyway, a good question to ask yourself at this stage is, how did you get diagnosed? Was it based on blood work? Was it based on an ultrasound? The reason why I say this is because a lot of my clients, a lot of the people I work with, and I do have a Fatty Liver Fighters online course, and I do have a coaching program, and the links will be in the description, by the way. Okay. So a lot of the people I work with, which is makes perfect sense, they really like to be able to quantify their progress. So they want to know where they're at now and then where they are in the next 3 to 6 months. And by the way, if you put your best foot forward and you make the dietary changes you need to make and you move your body more, this is really important. Even walking 150 minutes a week, right? Aerobic activity actually is superior to resistance training a little bit in terms of reducing liver fat. Although obviously both types of physical activity are going to be very good for you. So it's not really about choosing one or the other. But the best science does say that aerobic activity does have a slight edge. Okay. Anyway, how you were diagnosed is important. And the reason is that if you just got an ultrasound and your liver enzymes are high, that's not the best foundation for comparison, because liver enzymes are a little bit finicky. Sometimes they can stay high even when your liver is getting healthier. And an ultrasound is not that precise to quantify the amount of fat in your liver. So if you're able to, whether via your health insurance or privately, if you have the economic means, I would strongly recommend that you get what is known as a FibroScan. Okay. A FibroScan is a special type of imaging which takes 5 to 10 minutes, and it helps to quantify how much fat is stored in your liver and if there's any liver fibrosis. And it gives you a precise number so that in 3 to 6 months, when you put your best foot forward after you work with myself or another dietitian, or you just follow my advice. And by the way, my YouTube is full of free evidence-based guidance to help reverse fatty liver disease. So when you go follow my advice, if you get a fibro scan at the beginning of the process, at the end of the process, that is one of the best ways for you to understand if your liver is getting healthier. And this is so important. Now, if you cannot get a fibro scan and all you have is like an ultrasound and some liver enzymes, I want to give you some other blood work to keep in mind. Okay. Now, for both men and women, it's very important to look at HDL, which is the good cholesterol, and triglycerides, which is basically blood fats. Triglycerides and HDL, if they are out of range, there's a much higher chance your liver's not doing well. So if you got diagnosed with a fatty liver and both of these blood markers are out of range, seeing how they change over time is a great way to determine if your liver is getting better. So that's one thing I want you to keep in mind. For women specifically, especially postmenopausal women, markers of insulin resistance and just basically A1C and blood sugar are very important to keep in mind as well. In women specifically, because of a loss of estrogen with menopause, there's greater amounts of insulin resistance. And in women specifically, blood sugar is a very strong predictor of liver fat. So this is where men and women differ in this specific area. So look, regulating your blood sugar levels and not having your A1C too high, and obviously many people, by the way, who have pre and or type 2 diabetes also have a fatty liver. And the reason for that is the insulin resistance. Most people think about insulin resistance as having to do only with blood sugar, but insulin also helps to take fat out of your blood too. It takes sugar out of your blood, but it also takes fat out of your blood. So if you're resistant to insulin, what will end up happening ultimately is that there'll be more fat floating around in your bloodstream. And one way to measure that is triglycerides. And if there's more fat floating around in your bloodstream, there's a higher chance it's going to get stored in your liver where it should not be, which is why triglycerides and HDL are important. Anyway, back to insulin resistance. If you're a woman, again, postmenopausal, pay extra attention to strategies that are focused on regulating your blood sugar levels. For example, eating your vegetables first at a meal, eating more slowly, taking a walk after dinner. Okay, these are some strategies that no matter what you eat will reduce your blood sugar levels. Now, the next thing I want you to know is there is no single one or two supplements that's going to make a massive difference to your liver health. Okay, there's milk thistle out there, there's probiotics, and there's evidence for both of these that they have some benefit. There's omega-3 fatty acids, which can be very, very important if you don't consume fish like salmon, sardines, trout, and mackerel, because those are the only source of the omega-3s, EPA and DHA. So that's something I want you to be aware of. But the reality of supplements is the following, is that if you're willing to exercise more and to change your diet, you're going to be able to reverse fatty liver disease even if you don't use a supplement. And if all you do is take a supplement, you're probably not going to be able to reverse fatty liver. I mean, you're definitely not going to be able to reverse fatty liver disease if your diet is poor, right? So it kind of puts supplements into this kind of no man's land where, yes, they have some benefit, but it's not going to be enough. And it's not going to be necessary if you do other things really well. So I think supplements are probably most important for people who aren't able to completely change their diet and lifestyle, which I guess, fair enough, is the majority of people. Now, when I work with people in my course, in my community, in private coaching, like it is often the case, I will recommend a few supplements. Probiotics and omega-3s are the ones I recommend the most because they work on multiple bodily systems. And again, remember, the gut and the liver are connected. Many people with a fatty liver have imbalances between their good and bad gut bacteria. Probiotics can play a small role on top of diet and lifestyle changes to correct that balance. Okay. So these are some of the things I really want you to be aware of if you are newly diagnosed with fatty liver disease. Now, beyond that, please do be careful about people who tell you that, reversing fatty liver disease is all about cutting carbs or not eating fruit or not drinking pop. Like, it's obviously the case that drinking a liter of pop or soda a day is not great for your liver health. But the idea that if you have a can of pop here or there, that's going to be toxic to your liver is also not true. The liver is very strong and very resilient. And the health of the liver is determined not by one or two choices or one or two foods. It's determined by the totality and the average of what you do. So just think 80-20 rule. Okay. You don't need to be too hard on yourself in that regard. And beyond that, everyone, I mean, you just have to give it time. It will take at least 3 to 6 months to meaningfully reduce your liver fat content. If you have the ability to get professional guidance, I think it's very important to do so, because from the dietary perspective, what the best science shows me is that what is known as a high polyphenol Mediterranean diet, and I discussed that elsewhere on my page so you can understand what that means. A high polyphenol Mediterranean diet is probably going to be the best way to reverse fatty liver disease. But the problem is there are many different ways which you can bring this type of eating to life, right? One person could be doing the style of eating, it could look one way. One person could be doing the style of eating, it could look completely different, but they both technically are high polyphenol Mediterranean diets. So the last piece of advice I will give you is don't get pigeonholed into the idea that there's only one style of eating or one exact way that you must eat to reverse fatty liver disease. It's simply not true. And please, please, please do not cut out fruit. Numerous studies show that people who consume more berries and more citrus fruit have a lower risk of fatty liver disease. The reason for this is that these fruits are potently anti-inflammatory. They reduce insulin resistance. And again, remember, insulin resistance, inflammation, these are big drivers of fatty liver disease. Okay, so that would be my message for today, everyone. Please do take in more of my content if you need more help in this area. Feel free to comment liver below in the comments if you want me to reach out with more information on my course and my community. I'll put the links in the description. I hope you found this video helpful. If there's a certain type of content you'd like to see from me in the future, I generally do make shorts just because they're easier, but I'm trying a longer form today. Let me know in the comments if I can be of assistance. If you want references to anything I've discussed, or you want to see more of my writing in this area, let me know. I'm on Instagram at AndyTheRD as well, where I have more graphic content. And other than that, everyone, I hope you enjoy this video. Hope you have a wonderful day.